getting access to the console of the instance, so that one can do other activities, because there are services, most of the open source and services which requires a console access to start and stop the service, to schedule a cron type job, to so these are the SSS used. And then you just create a security, and then there are other options also for other types of the protocol. So these are the more three important one. Yeah. Now let's get into this one. So what it is, so this is the AWS. Okay, this is your availability zone, this is the instance, this is a security group, this is the root, Amazon EBS, this is a private key, and this is the internet. Okay, so this is like the very basic setup. What does that mean? That this is the AWS infrastructure, or you can say VPC, or yeah, just virtual private cloud. Inside inside AWS, you have chosen one availability zone inside a region, which could be, let's say, New York data center. In this, you created your instance, and in that you have mapped your root volume in this instance from the Amazon EBS, which is in the other subnet. So I'll explain what is a subnet is. And there is a security group. Here you define that this machine can access or ping this ABS, Amazon EBS volumes machine. So this is also stored in one machine, right? So, and it will have an IP address, correct? So once I configure, at the before configuration, it will do all those pre-validation. So it does not mean like I created everything and then I created this separately and then I went ahead and no. Once I try to attach this, so the thing is, this will be there beforehand before you create this if you want to use the Amazon EBS. So once you go in this step, attach your this, it will do those validations. Okay, and then I have to secure, or I have to make it explicitly inside the security group. So so there are, that's why the networking part is, and there are many different scenarios. The way we create we move. So on those console, you have an options to decide, check these things, and and then this is your internet, and this is the computer. And here I try to log in. I have an IP address, and I use my private key, and then I log in. So it says like, launch instance, go to the console, click on the launch instance, which will be somewhere here. Choose an Amazon machine, and okay, and then you have these micro, means like, these are like the different configurational machines which are named. So there is a one which is like a free tier for, and just check for free tier eligible, review and launch. Once you review and launch, machine is up and running in your chosen region. Then you click your yeah, security groups, then you edit your security groups, then so basically when you choose this here only, right, your this part comes in practice. Okay, so then you create your security groups, then you configure your security groups. So basically what AWS does, it does make these options available for an end user, so a person does not need to configure this. So they provide it by default. This is like a standard thing, so they don't want the solution architect to spend time touching here. So they basically allow these services to be available. Okay, then you can edit your security groups. Basically you provide your HTTPS and SSH one, and then you configure your security group, you review and launch it. Okay, on your instance page you can see your instance is up and running. Then you have a public DNS, then you check your status. And to clean up instances, basically like, and then there is a way to connect. That's what I told, there are different way, and once we go we'll see. Then you clean up your instance, and that means you are basically shutting down the things. And this is the best practices. So for security, you have to use IAM users, IAM rules, then use the least permissive rules for security group, regularly patch and update. Storage, you need to understand what is the data position backup, use Amazon EBS volume, encrypt your EBS volume, resource management, you can tag your resource and you can manage it. So basically what you can, based on those tags, you can allow what is the computing you can actually give it to uh, your instances, and then you can view your limits for emergency, and then you have a backup and recovery. Regularly you backup a previous volume and deploy your critical components into a different availability zones, replicate to the data appropriately, design your applications to handle the dynamic IP addressing when your instance starts. And this could be one of the important, interview question, that how do you allow, yeah, so you can note it out, and how do you allow your application to for dynamic IP. So basically what happens, like, what does it mean? Like instead of having a static IP in one CDI range, you can have the different IP behind the scene and your host name remain the same, so that your other services does not breaks out. Then you monitor your instance and respond to the event, and you have to also make sure that you're prepared for failover. And so what does it mean? Like, you should have those things. It's a DR strategy. So pretty much you understand that. So you have to actually test and all those things. So, okay. So there are, things which, as a part of a demonstration, Amazon says, like, if you're newbies and if you want to explore out, what are the things you can do? So they are saying, like, install a LAMP server. So basically, what is a LAMP server? So basically, like, the LAMP server is Apache Web Services with a PHP and a MariaDB. So basically, PHP helps for the front end. MariaDB is the backend data. So just to give you a web services so that you can log in, and so it will be just a basic setup, and then you can just to establish the portal where you can have your login credential, and then you can log in and use it. So how do you do that? So first it says, like, that you have your EC2 instance up and running. Based on the choose, then you update you. This is the go to the AWS console, yeah, using AWS CLI. Then you do this command, basically update it. This is like a standard practice, what I have seen across my consulting career. So this is the standard practice where you update your uh, servers before going it. Then you install this package. Okay, then you install MariaDB server. You don't have to actually do some research. These are just a pretty standard things, like you have a exe file in Windows. So same way for Linux. So this is what it is. Then this is the command which will help you to start the httpd. So httpd is for daemon. This is enabling. So what it means, if you stop and restart, um, you do not have to it will automatically restart. So this is for checking whether it is enabled or not. Then you add the security rules on your instances, view inbound rules. So yeah, so you have to actually understand what these rules are, what are the source IP. So this has been everything from port number 22. So what it means, like if I have a 4 computer on a 4 different network, 4 different IP address, it will allow 22 over this port. All incoming it will allow. Simply, if I'm able to ping those the public IP of the particular instance, I can SSH. Okay, 80 is the industry standard port on which yeah. So for TCP IP port, 80 is the port HTTP. Okay, then you test your web address, which is like going to, how do you test it? That's okay. Yeah. In the brief, type the public DNS address. So once you do it, you get the test page, and that's it. And then you can add the EC2 users, which is, this is also Unix command. This is not a AWS command. This is Linux command basically. And this is the users, and then you exit. And this is groups is also the Linux command. Then you give it chown recursively. What does that mean? That these are directories. So from where till here, all this will be under EC2 user / Apache. Then you give this permissions to this file, and then you find this file and you execute cmod mode on this. Okay, So self-explanatory, these are the Linux commands. Then you use the find command to, yeah, you have the find command. Then you recursively change the file permissions to 0664. Then you test your LAMP server. This is the echo command, you do it. You go to this one and this thing, you should get this something like this. If you're able to see it, it means you're good. Then they said that you can delete it, that's fine. Then you secure your database, you start your database, and when prompted, type the following password for type the password, root password for the root does not have a password, press enter. So just follow the prompt, and then these are the options which gave it. So basically what it is trying to say you that, you delete the anonymous user accounts, you remove the remote root login, remove the test databases, and reload the privilege table so that the changes can be saved, and then you stop and enable it. This is an option. So basically what it is the web-based database management tool, which is called PHP admin, to view and edit the MySQL database. So if you want, you can just go ahead with this, and all these things are happening in your instance which you created, and then this is a wget command, where what happens, if you provide your URL, it will automatically download the package, and then remove, and this follows self-explanatory. Then you log in, and then there are options why you can't connect it. So basically you have to check based on the error output, whether this is enabled or not. And then yes, this is one of the scenarios, so there are multiple scenarios. So preferably, like, the way we troubleshoot it, if somebody comes to apply that approach. And so this is not about, how to fix the LAMP server, it is more about how to use the AWS instance. So same way, you have now installed a LAMP web server with the Amazon Linux AMI. So you go through the same document, and let me move it fast, and let's see if there is something. Yeah, okay. Then same, you need to host a word blog press. Okay. So basically, okay, so this is the Amazon. The OS was different, but those are both the Linux, so your process remains same. Then there are some prerequisite. I don't think so. Those are something you, or because when you do an update -y, it takes most of the things. So based on my experience, not always, but yes. So you go with the simple, you download the package, untar it, start the MariaDB, MySQL ID, MySQL, and you just follow this process. So basically it is a LAMP server only, but the only difference is, like, when you follow all this process, it is customized to word blog, which we know it. And once we launch it, we will be getting, the word blog consoles up and running. So yeah. Then it is like, how do you configure SSL and TLS? So which is SSL? SSL is a secure socket layer, and it is also one of the important, interview questions. So these are straightforward question. Hey, how will you configure SSL and TLS? They will not give you why, Amazon Linux 2 or AMI, but the process itself is, very standard. So what is this? This is a secure socket layer and transport layer security. Creates an encrypted channel between a web server and a web client that protects data in transit from being a pseudo's own. Okay, now there are two important components, which is web server and web client. So web client will be your laptop, desktop, sitting in India, Australia, China. Web server is Amazon EC2 instance, where we install the LAMP and all. And yeah, so you're 1,000 miles away. You're sending requests from your laptop sitting in India, Australia, whatever the place, but away from the data center. So in that tunnel, information, it flows, although it take, let's say, under a millisecond. There is an option, not an option, there is a feature which we'll call SLTLS, to create an encrypted channel. So basically your packets get encrypted so that even somebody capture it, they will not able to crack it. The objective is, let's say you are sending a user ID, password, or some other piece of info, because end of the day, whatever you are typing, it has to go to the web server. From web server, it has to go to a database, get it stored, process, and return you back the result, right? So in this, if somebody captures your data packet, there are chances, people will get the info. Okay. So this is saying like web encryption is often referred to as simple SSL. Okay. Web browser still support as a structured TLS as a less familiar. So the thing is like SSL is the old terminology, TLS is the new terminology, and it says like TLS is less vulnerable to attack. So Amazon Linux too has disabled server-side support for all version of SSL. So it means like in Amazon at the server level, they will not have any features, where you can configure the SSL. Okay. So I think the objective would be like, that the theft would happen. It can happen both the ways when the request is being sent to you and when you are sending the request. But the first part is like the request should come from the client first, then it will go from database, from the web browser back to the client. So they wanted to protect the other way around, rather than protecting this way around, just to make the user more, I would say, like, SSL part, because TLS comes, so they realize like, TLS is a superset of SSL, so better configure TLS. So there are, other ways. So uh, yeah. So what is the prerequisite? The prerequisite is like it has to be the EBS backed Amazon Linux. Then you have to create your security group, allow your instances to accept connection on the following TCP port, which is SS, which is on port 22, HTTP is on port 80, HTTPS port 443. Install the Apache web server. You did it step by step. Then you identify and authenticate by the TLS public encryption refers to the domain name service to use your EC2 to host a public website. You need to register a domain name for web server or transfer existing domain to your Amazon EC2 host. Okay. So basically, whatever your domain name is, you have to transfer your domain name to your EC2 host. Then connect your instance, run this Linux command, start this thing, update it. Now till here, you are almost updated. Then you install this mode underscore SSL. That is the only thing when you do it. And you have to check that your file has this sl.conf and make dummy start. And this is all you need to do. And this will take care automatically. No manual intervention after that. And you can do your testing, like this. This is what it is. And then okay, then it says like since you did the testing, you have to open this file and you have to comment this, and then you restart your Apache. Now once you do this, your web browser will become into HTTPS and you are good. Step 2 is like a CS signed certificate. You obtain that. Then you have to create a default RSA key. Then you have to do a stronger RSA key and using a non-RSA cipher. Do this. So basically you have to understand, the flow chart rest process you need to always follow. You can't remember this, but yes, you have to know it. Okay, this is what it is. So if you follow this process, it's pretty straightforward, industry standard, and there is a further way to harden your this thing, and you do not need to remember this, because you need to know what is this and how it is basically is done, and then you have to follow this, and this is what this is being achieved. Okay. So now go to configure SSL TLS on Amazon Linux. I think it is the same process. There is no change because I'll tell you why. Because see, these OS are being named on the way who creates and configures, let's say, another Amazon. But this process of configuring is like open source, and these are the standards. The way how they make it a standard because they check the kernel version, and based on the kernel version I can have a different flavors of the Linux, but my kernel version always remains same, and there are only defined 4 to 5 kernel version on which Linux runs. Then what you do, how do you increase the availability of your application on Amazon EC2? So let's try to understand what this is trying to do. So this is your AWS, which is your called, yeah, and this, the whole AWS infrastructure. This is where the load balancer is. This is your one subnet one, which is called Ec2 instance. It's in availability zone A. Then you have your subnet 2 availability zone B. Then this is the part of the VPC, and you have a two in one VPC. You created a two subnet. Subnet is subnetwork. Network is like network, and then you have a subnetwork. So assume it is, like so VPC is basically a, assume it's a pipeline which you created first after you create a login, and then in that you are attaching the left and right pipe for the water to flow on left and water to flow on the right. And you can also have an option where the left and the right flow directions can interact. So just try to visualize like that way. And then you have a internet gateway, load balancer, internet gateway, and user. So what happens? Users connect, request comes to load balancer, then it will distribute the load here. So if it all fails this, request goes here. If it all fails this, request goes here. Then there is a prerequisite, what you need to do. So that you have to have your virtual private cloud, you have to launch an instance in the VPC, connect to the instance and customize it, test your application that your instance is configured properly, create a custom image from your instance, create a Maya role, So you do all the base thing. Then load balance. So for that, you go to the load balancing, create the load balancer. You give you the name, schema, listener, availability zone. Then you create a new security group. Then you configure your routing, and then basically you define, you have to define basically. So what happens, like all these are independent identity, and the only way on the paper it looks as one identity when you are able to communicate each other based on certain rules, and these are like self-explanatory, and this is the standard you just need to follow. And yes, you need to understand what is the auto scaling and all those things, so scaling is one thing. One is like I already give the two instance and I go, but for AWS what happens, like it's a cloud service, so if you give a static and 10 instance at a time, you need to pay for it, but all the 10 I won't need it. So there is an option when I can scale to 10 based on the need, so my performance does not get impacted. And right, yeah, so performance does not get impacted. And yeah, right, so my performance does not get impacted. Okay, so now, and when I have an auto scaling enabled, my performance does not get impacted. It auto scale. When my performance get reduced, my scaling gets reduced. Okay, now, yeah, there is a way to test the load balancer and verify that your instance are ready, verify and restore the load balancer. Okay, and auto scaling growth. So when we do a demo for this down the line, we'll check this. This is something interesting and important, and pretty much if you have understood this, so typically you will not had hard time to understand this. Let's move to Amazon machine imaging. So what is this? So this is the typical diagram, and EBS snapshot template. So the following diagrams summarize the AMI life cycle. After you create and register an AMI, you can use it to launch your new instance. You can copy with the same region when okay. Creating, first you need to create your own AMI. You can do in two-way based on Amazon EBS backed or instance store. You can buy, share, and sell AMIs, and then you can register. Then there is an option, how do you do it? So yeah, there are two versions, which is Amazon Linux 2 and Amazon Linux AMI are supported and maintained Linux image provided by AWS. These are the features: stable, secure, no additional charge. So I can use this without any charge. Repository access to MySQL, PostgRE, Python, Ruby, updated regularly. And what are the AMI types? So there are 5 options, which in region wise you can select, operating system wise you can select, architecture wise you can select, with the permission you can select, and the storage one. I think we discussed more of this. Then there are 3 things, which is public, explicit, and implicit. So when the permissions for AMI is set to public. It has a launch permission for all AWS accounts, and then when it is explicit for specific, and when it is implicit, and the self-explanatory. Explicit, I decide. Implicit, I decide. So basically, explicit means like I give access to few specified AWS accounts. And when I do it implicit, so already it will be hosted. So launch permission will be, one has to reach to me before I can, give it. So then this is the difference. The best thing you can learn. Rest is okay. Just data persistence part, we can understand. So it says like if it is a Amazon EBS back to him, the root volume is deleted. Okay. So by default, the root volume is deleted when the instance terminates. Same for both. Data on any other Amazon will persist after instance terminates by default. So basically, if it terminates by default, your data still remain here, and you can relaunch with this. And this goes when it. So your charge for EBS volume and your charge for S3, and so basically you will be charged. So and based on this, what are the resources are being consumed, you have to charge, and then these are the features, and you can this thing. So yeah, determining the root devices for your AMI, and what is the device. Okay, you can decide, go to your Amazon instance, click on AMIs, and check the value of root device types and details. If it is a EBS, it will be Amazon EBS. If it is an instance store, it will be the instance store. Then it is a stop state, default data storage, boot time, how you charge. Okay, so virtualization type. So there are, 2, which is like hardware virtualization, and another is called a PV. So the concept is like, yeah, you have to just remember HVM MI is a fully virtualized set of hardware and boot by executing the master boot record of the root block device of your image. PBMIs would be the special boot loader called PV grab, which starts the boot cycle and then chain loads the kernel specific to the menu. So you need to understand that this is, very important basic, I would say, a questionnaire which you'll accept, based on this, because when you design a solutions, choosing PV versus HVM makes a difference. So you need to understand what it is, and these are like straightforward set of characteristics. Then there's the way, how do you find a Linux AMI, and once you log into the console, it will give you so many other details, and you can also go through AWS CLI. You have to just follow the commands, and then there are other options. The best is go to the console, web console, and search it. It will give you more better results, and once you become more better, I would say, use the AWS CLI. So try to use AWS CLI for some administrative maintenance work and the other things. But I think rest other things, where you have to see some reports or some set of the values to make the decisions, and those are like correlated, I would suggest go for a graphical user interface. Okay. So shared AMI is, created by developer who creates it and make it available for other users to use, so that it's just like saying that I have a piece of a software, I gave you that environment, so I can ask, hey, use my pre-configured OS and start your development, and we can share the workspace and do the development, so that we remain at the same pace. Okay. So generally it's for the React and Node.js application where the updates come so fast, and the problem with those is like, if two parallel guys are developing on a two different environment, and if one of them updates up, it breaks out. So then same thing, no rocket science here. You go to the console, you check it, and then you can use the command, and then you use it. Then how do you make a AMI public? Go to the console and then modify the permissions, and then you can do the same thing using this thing. And then there is a explicit specific. Go to the console, account number, add the account number and choose it, and then you can do the same thing using this thing. You can also bookmark your AMI, and this is not something, this is like a normal thing. Okay. Then there are guidelines, how to do you share Linux AMI. So this is update it before sharing it. Disable the password-based remote login. Disable local root access. Remove SSH host key pair. Okay. Install public key credentials, and disabling SSD DNS check, identify, protect. So basically what happens, like, you need to take a note of it, create a Word document, maintain this thing. You do not need to remember it. And then there are paid AMIs, which you bought it from other people, and you do it on those situations where you don't have the time to consider, and there are people, who are good at doing some creative work rather than getting an installation work. So they choose based on your configuration, like, getting a laptop from the market. So I choose my configuration. Hey, I need this RAM and this much of computing power. I do not consider how those wires are, wind up. So it's like some those concepts. So one can go, this is some feature one can go it. Okay, then there is an option once you go to the AWS marketplace, and you can just follow it. Okay, then there is a way how can you create an Amazon EBS backed Linux EMI, and then there is a concept how do you do it. So the step one is like yeah, select an appropriate EMI to serve as a starting point for you. So basically you have to check an EBS backed EMI for your new AMI, and then choose launch to launch an instance of this thing that you have selected. While the so the what is the this one, this will come from Amazon. While the instance is running, you can perform install software, application, copy data, you know then you create your snapshot, and then you create an image, and to view. So the basic thing is, like, you need to create from existing appropriate EBS backed AMI, and then you follow the process. Simple, no rocket science. Okay. Then you can use from the command line, and so how do you create from a snapshot? Okay. If you have a snapshot of the root device of an instance, you can create him. Okay. So this is for the root. Just go to the console under Elastic Block Store, choose snapshots. So your snapshots are this, and then you have an option and create image, and you follow the process. Same thing here. You have your pre-request. Before you create, you install the AMI tool, CLI, and account ID, and then okay, let's see. Then you say how do you set your AMI tools, and basically what you do, you log into existing instance, do all these Linux commands. Basically you are trying to make it more updates, secure it, and doing everything, and then you have to install a graph software, and for this is for the HVM instance only. And so this is a type of the instance. You need to know what is the difference between PV and HVM, and based on that, you have to follow the steps. And then you have to install these packages. This is called partition. Then you have to do this cert, and basically, what, you have to follow this process end by end. So these all commands are self-explanatory, and the good or bad part, whatever you say, that you did not have to understand, like, okay, this is what the step is. Just you need to understand the flow chart, that, you get a set of software, and based on those software functionalities, the way it is designed and defined, you follow this process. So even if you understand it, you still need to take a note of it. And on my practical experiences, you always refer the document and follow the steps, even if you know it. Okay. Then there is an option, how do you convert your instance stored backed AMI to an Amazon EBS backed AMI? So you just still follow the same process. Basically, you are attaching the volumes, create a volume, attach a volume. And so basically, in a nutshell, what happens, like, you had to copy the instance stored data to the EBS volume, and then you have to stop your instance and reference uh, the EBS volume and restart it. Okay, that's the only thing you need to do. Then this is, tool reference. Basically, what these are the commands, you can use it. So just for self explorations, and yeah. Okay, you have an option to use the encryption EBS backed AMIs and okay, okay, okay. So it says like EBS volume comma slash snapshots in AMIs can be encrypted either by default AWS key CMK. So you also need to from interview point of view, you have to understand the encryption, which is also important as a one key component because it comes into the security and safety. So if you are appearing for an interview, you have to know it, or at least the flow chart, and then you have to follow the similar process. How do you do it? So what it says, like an AMI backed by an unencrypted snapshot is used to launch with an encrypted. So AMI, this is encrypted, encrypted, and then re-encrypt. So basically, what happens, like your key plays an important part in the between, so it gets into the self-authentication mode. And in this, so if you understand these diagrams, pretty much same thing. You have your unencrypted, you have a crypted, so everything goes here. But when it has to work, it uses the CMK keys, and unlocks it, and it works simple. And it happens like you know instant. You don't have to do it, but you just have to provide a way. So yeah. So there is how do you copying an AMI, and so here also permission for copying and stored AMI. Okay, so if you see, if the you first of all the user need to have an permissions to copy it, and then you can just read it, and then you just go to the Amazon console, and from the choose you and then choose images AMI. So once you go to that resource, so see the point is whatever you have to work on that any resource in the AWS, you have to go to that particular resource. Okay, and then on that resource you have your action button, which is like a anywhere 90% of the time you will have an action button. So once you click the drop down, you get the necessary commands what you wanted to do. But yes, before you reach there, you need to know why you want to do it. So that's where the understanding is more important, and then you click a copy, and then you can also use it in AWS CLI and Windows PowerShell. And so these are different options, but as a general, the basic themes remain the same. But these are something like just to make sure different people use it. And there is a way to, if there is a because the AMI copy is big, if you want to stop it, you have to deregister it basically. Then it will click it, obtain billing information. Okay, so I think um, we have already covered a lot, and so we'll continue again on the next video, and we'll review the remaining sections here. And okay, yeah, thank you. So meet you again. Bye.